Imagine this. You've just been promoted. You walk into your first meeting as a leader, ready to set the tone. You take your seat, start speaking, and then someone smirks. Another casually pulls out their phone. A senior colleague leans back, arms crossed, and sighs as if your words are a waste of time. Then it happens. Someone cuts you off mid-sentence, talking over you like you're invisible. Laughter ripples through the room, not outright mocking, but enough to make you feel like you don't belong. What do? Do you raise your voice to demand attention? Do you let it slide and hope they'll respect you later? Or do you use a far more powerful strategy, one that shifts the energy instantly and ensures that next time they listen when you speak? Respect is not something you ask for, it is something you command. And it has nothing to do with status or authority. It's about your presence, your composure, and how you handle subtle moments of dismissal. Today, I'll show you exactly how to command respect instantly, using timeless Stoic principles that have guided history's greatest minds. And make sure to watch until the end, because I'll reveal one silent mistake that instantly weakens your credibility, something even the smartest people unknowingly do. Let's begin. 1. Your presence speaks louder than words. Before you even speak, people have already formed an opinion about you. It happens in a fraction of a second, and history proves it. Take Barack Obama. Before he was president, before he had any real power, he was a relatively unknown senator. Yet, when he walked into a room, people noticed. Why? It wasn't his words, it was his presence. He stood tall, he moved with certainty. He paused before he spoke. He held eye contact that made people listen. And because of that, when he did speak, his words carried weight. People don't respect you because of your title. They respect you because of how you carry yourself. When you step into a room, your posture, your eye contact, and your composure decide whether people take you seriously before you even open your mouth. Imagine yourself in a professional setting, waiting for an important introduction. A colleague approaches, hand extended. One person remains seated, offering a limp handshake without looking up. Another rises to their feet, extends a firm handshake, and meets the other person's gaze directly. Which of these two do you instinctively take more seriously? Standing when greeting someone is a simple yet profoundly impactful gesture. It signals engagement, confidence, and an awareness of both yourself and the space you occupy. It tells others that you are present, that you acknowledge them, and that you expect to be acknowledged in return. The difference may seem small, but over time, these subtle cues accumulate, shaping the way people perceive and respond to you. Beyond physical stance, the way you engage with eye contact is one of the most immediate and defining factors of presence. The most respected individuals do not let their gaze wander aimlessly or dart away in discomfort. They hold eye contact with calm, deliberate steadiness, not in an aggressive way, but with a quiet assertion that says, "I am here, I am present, and I am in control." When someone avoids eye contact or looks away too quickly, it signals hesitation, insecurity, or even a lack of conviction in what they are saying. On the other hand, maintaining steady eye contact creates an undeniable sense of confidence. It commands attention without demanding it. In a moment of conversation, whether you are speaking or listening, let your eyes stay fixed on the person in front of you. If someone interrupts you, do not look away or shrink back. Instead, hold your gaze, pause, and resume when you are ready. This alone shifts the dynamic, reinforcing that you are not someone to be dismissed. The way you walk into a room carries just as much weight as how you interact within it. Someone who rushes in, scanning the space anxiously or looking for validation, immediately gives away their uncertainty, But someone who walks with deliberate, unhurried steps, head held high, and movements composed, effortlessly sets a different tone. People take note of those who move with purpose. Even before you speak, your presence is already working in your favor or against you. The key is not to fake confidence, but to embody it in the way you hold yourself. If you carry yourself as if you belong, people will assume you do. If you hesitate, the world will hesitate with you. But presence is not only about posture, movement, or eye contact. It is also in the way you speak. You can have the strongest stance and the most commanding gaze, but if your voice lacks authority, your presence will feel incomplete. Those who rush through their words, speak too softly, or overuse filler words unintentionally undermine their own credibility. In contrast, those who slow their speech, lower their tone slightly, and emphasize their words with control and intention immediately gain more respect. The most powerful communicators do not simply speak, they make people listen. They do this not by being the loudest, but by speaking as if every word they say matters. The next time you are in a conversation, practice slowing down. Take a moment before you respond. Let silence work in your favor. The less you rush, the more impact your words will carry. Marcus Aurelius once wrote in Meditations, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If you think small, if you hesitate in your own worth, if you doubt yourself internally, it will manifest externally in the way you move, speak, and present yourself to the world. But if you cultivate confidence within, if you stand with certainty, meet people's eyes without fear, and speak with conviction, then that presence will shape how others see and respond to you. Respect is not something you ask for, it is something you exude. So now ask yourself, how do you carry yourself? Do you rise when greeting someone, or do you remain seated? Do you hold eye contact, or do you break it too soon? Do you speak with control, or do you rush to fill silences? Every interaction is an opportunity to shift how you are perceived. Drop a comment below. What aspect of your presence do you think needs the most refinement? 2. Handling interruptions. Imagine you're in the middle of making an important point in a conversation, a meeting, or even a casual discussion. You've thought through your words, your argument is sound, and you're expressing yourself clearly. Then, without warning, someone cuts you off. Maybe they think their point is more important. Maybe they're used to dominating conversations, or maybe they simply don't respect your voice enough to wait their turn. What do? Do you raise your voice to talk over them? Do you stop speaking and let them take over? Or do you handle it in a way that immediately commands respect without losing your composure? Most people react instinctively. They either retreat, feeling disrespected and unheard, or they try to compete, speaking louder and faster in an attempt to reclaim the floor. But both of these responses put you in a position of weakness. When you back down, you signal that your words are not worth waiting for. When you argue for space, you engage in a power struggle that diminishes your authority. The most respected individuals handle interruptions differently. They do not rush. They do not compete. They do not react emotionally. Instead, they use a strategy that is simple but incredibly powerful: silence. When someone cuts you off, do not immediately try to reclaim your words. Instead, pause, hold eye contact, wait. This moment of silence does two things. First, it makes the interrupter aware of their own rudeness without you having to say a word. Second, it shifts the attention back to you. People in the room, or even the person who interrupted, begin to feel the weight of your presence. You are not scrambling to be heard. You are commanding the space with your composure. Think about how powerful leaders, skilled negotiators, and respected speakers handle interruptions. They do not get rattled. They understand that control over a conversation is not about volume, it's about presence. If you react emotionally, you give away your power. But if you hold your ground with a moment of quiet confidence, you shift the dynamic in your favor. After your pause, when the person who interrupted has finished speaking, continue exactly where you left off. Without acknowledging the interruption, without asking permission, and without rushing your words. This sends a subtle but powerful message. Your point is important, and it will be heard. If necessary, you can reinforce your position with a simple, direct statement. As I was saying, let me finish my point, and then I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'll continue now. These are not confrontational phrases. They are firm, calm, and in control. The goal is not to win the conversation, but to establish an expectation of respect. When you handle interruptions this way, people start to notice. They learn that when you speak, you expect to be heard. Some people, however, interrupt habitually. They do it without thinking, unaware of how it affects the flow of conversation. Others interrupt strategically, as a way of asserting dominance. Either way, your response should be the same. Do not let their behavior dictate your reaction. Consider a scenario where you are presenting an idea in a group setting, and someone repeatedly interjects before you've finished. The first time, you use silence. The second time, you hold their gaze longer. But if they persist, it's time to escalate. Not with emotion, but with controlled authority. You can say something like, "I'd like to finish my point before moving on. Please wait until I'm done speaking." Let's make sure everyone has the space to express their thoughts fully. If someone dismisses your words in a conversation, stop speaking. Let the silence hang there. Then, when the room notices, calmly ask, "I see you're distracted. Should I continue, or is this not the right time?" These statements are neutral but firm. They set a boundary without aggression, but they make it clear that you are not someone to be interrupted lightly. Seneca once wrote in Letters to Lucilius, "He who is not a good servant will not be a good master." This applies perfectly to conversation. If you allow yourself to be interrupted without holding your ground, you teach others that your words are optional, that they can disregard your input without consequence. But when you establish boundaries through calm control, you earn a level of respect that goes beyond words. There's a psychological reason why this approach works. People respect what they cannot shake. When someone interrupts you and expects you to either retreat or react, but instead you remain composed and deliberate, they are forced to reconsider. They realize that they are not in control of the interaction. You are. And once they feel that, they will begin to think twice before interrupting you again. This skill isn't just useful in professional settings. It applies in social conversations, negotiations, even in personal relationships. The way you handle interruptions directly reflects how much you value your own voice. If you let people speak over you, you teach them that your words can be dismissed. If you react emotionally, you teach them that they can control your state of mind. But if you hold steady, if you let silence do the work, if you continue speaking as if nothing happened, you send a message that is far more powerful than any argument. I am worth listening to. Now, take a moment and reflect. How do you typically react when someone interrupts you? Do you retreat? Do you argue? Or do you command attention with your composure? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if this resonates with you, stay tuned, because in the next section, we'll explore how to handle mockery without losing your dignity. 3. How to handle being mocked. Imagine you're in a group conversation, sharing your thoughts, when suddenly someone makes a joke at your expense. Maybe it's a sarcastic remark disguised as humor, or a playful jab that carries an edge of condescension. The room erupts in laughter, not necessarily cruel, but enough to put you in an awkward position. You feel the weight of their words settling in, the subtle challenge behind the joke. It's a moment of choice. Do you laugh along to keep the peace? Do you fire back aggressively? Or do you handle it in a way that immediately shifts the dynamic and ensures that next time they think twice before making you the target? Most people fall into one of two traps. Some respond with nervous laughter, brushing it off while feeling a quiet sting inside. This only reinforces the behavior, showing the other person that they can mock you without consequences. Others react emotionally, launching into a defensive explanation or firing back with an insult. But this too works against you because it reveals that their words got to you. And once someone knows they can control your emotions with a simple joke, they will keep doing it. The most effective response is not to ignore it, nor is it to fight back with equal hostility. Instead, you use a strategy that turns the joke back on the person delivering it without lowering yourself to their level. One of the best ways to do this is by asking them to repeat it. A simple, calm, "I didn't catch that. Could you say it again?" forces them to bring their joke back into the spotlight. And here's where things get interesting. Most jokes lose their impact the second they have to be explained. The humor fades, the moment becomes awkward, and the person who made the remark is suddenly the one on the defensive. If someone jokes at your expense, rather than nervously laughing along, meet their gaze and ask, "I'm curious. Why do you think that's funny?" The moment someone has to explain a joke meant to undermine you, its power disappears. Imagine someone at a gathering says, "Wow, I didn't expect you to actually be on time for once." Instead of reacting with frustration or brushing it off, you meet their gaze and say, "Sorry, I didn't hear you. What was that?" Now, they're faced with a dilemma. Either they repeat it and risk making it sound petty and forced, or they awkwardly backtrack. Either way, the power dynamic shifts. You are no longer the passive recipient of the joke, you are in control. Another powerful response is to acknowledge their attempt at humor, but neutralize its effect. A calm, slightly amused statement like, "I see what you're trying to do there, but I'll let you try again." This approach does two things. It subtly calls out their intent, while also making it clear that their words don't affect you. When you remain composed, unshaken and in control, the person attempting to mock you is left without the reaction they expected. Epictetus once wrote in Enchiridion, "If someone speaks ill of you, do not make excuses, but answer, 'He did not know the rest of my faults, or he would not have mentioned only these.'" This is the essence of self-mastery, recognizing that the words of others only hold power if you let them. The person who can laugh at themselves, who does not feel the need to prove their worth through arguments or explanations, is untouchable. But what if the joke carries real malice? What if it's not just a light-hearted jab, but an attempt to humiliate? This is where your ability to control the energy of the situation becomes essential. Instead of responding with aggression, you use a level-headed but firm boundary. A statement like, "I don't see the value in that kind of humor," or "You're better than that. Let's keep it worthwhile," disarms the situation while setting a clear standard. You are not attacking them, but you are making it clear that their behavior does not belong in a conversation with you. One of the most powerful aspects of dealing with mockery or ridicule is that people remember how you react. If you crumble under it, you become an easy target. If you overreact, you validate their attempt to provoke you. But if you handle it with calm confidence, you send a message that sticks. I do not need to defend myself because their words do not define me. And over time, something interesting happens. The people who once tested you with jokes and sarcasm stop trying. They realize that you are not someone who can be easily played with. The dynamic shifts, and you begin to command the kind of respect that does not require aggression or defense, only the quiet strength of a person who knows their own worth. So next time someone tries to make you the subject of their joke, take a breath. Instead of reacting emotionally, respond with intention. Make them repeat it. Call out their intent with calm amusement. Or simply set the boundary and move on. Because the moment you show that you cannot be shaken by their words, you win the game without even playing it. And if this resonates with you, don't take your eyes off the screen, because in the next section, we'll explore how to handle provocation with absolute grace, without ever letting it diminish you. 4. How to respond to provocation. Imagine walking into a room full of people who already doubt you. You speak with clarity and confidence, presenting your ideas, and just when you think you're making an impact, someone interrupts. Their words are sharp, not loud, not openly hostile, but calculated. A subtle jab, a condescending smirk, a dismissive remark just quiet enough to be brushed off, but loud enough to make a statement. The people around you react. A few chuckle awkwardly, others shift uncomfortably, and you feel it. A slow rising heat in your chest, the instinct to fire back, to defend yourself, to make them regret disrespecting you. But in that very moment, the moment you allow emotion to dictate your response, you lose control. And when someone realizes they can manipulate you, they will do it again. This is where so many people fail, not because they lack intelligence, strength, or character, but because they forget that true power lies not in proving yourself to others, but in mastering yourself. The most respected individuals in history did not gain their stature by reacting to every challenge thrown their way. They understood that control over oneself is the greatest display of strength, that remaining unfazed in the face of provocation is what separates those who command respect from those who constantly find themselves fighting for it. The key is simple. Never let anyone else dictate your emotional state. The moment you react impulsively, you play into their hands. But if you remain composed, you shift the dynamic entirely, making them realize that no matter what they say, they hold no power over you. This is a lesson that Abraham Lincoln understood better than most. Before he became one of the most respected leaders in history, he was mocked publicly by a well-known political adversary, Edwin Stanton, who called him a lanky, awkward fool and dismissed his intelligence. Many in Lincoln's position would have retaliated, met insult with insult, or sought revenge once they had the upper hand. But Lincoln did none of that. He did not fight back with words. He did not engage in petty arguments. Instead, he allowed his actions to speak for him. Years later, when Lincoln was elected president, he could have cast Stanton aside, humiliated him as Stanton had done to him. Instead, he appointed him to his cabinet as Secretary of War, not out of spite, but because he knew Stanton was the best person for the job. Over time, Stanton, once Lincoln's biggest critic, became his most devoted ally. And when Lincoln was assassinated, it was Stanton who stood over his body and whispered, "Now he belongs to the ages." That moment was a testament to the power of restraint, to the ability to turn an enemy into an admirer not through conflict, but through self-control. And this is what most people fail to realize. Respect is not won through arguments, nor through force. It is earned through presence, through the quiet confidence of someone who does not need to engage in every battle, because they know they have already won. The next time someone tries to provoke you, do not meet their hostility with hostility. Instead, shift the power dynamic by forcing them to justify their words. Rather than reacting emotionally, ask a question. What makes you say that? Or why do you think that's relevant? And watch how quickly their confidence fades. More often than not, those who provoke others do not have a strong foundation for their words. Their goal is not to engage in a real discussion, but to get a reaction, to establish dominance by pulling you into their game. When they are forced to explain themselves, when they are made to hear their own words out loud, the power shifts, and suddenly they are the ones on the defensive. But not all provocations can be handled with subtlety. Some cross the line into blatant disrespect, moments where your dignity is being tested, where silence alone is not enough. In these cases, the most powerful response is not anger, not argument, but a firm, deliberate statement that sets an undeniable boundary. I'm not interested in engaging in this kind of conversation. No explanation, no justifications, just a clear, unwavering line that lets them know they have overstepped. And if they continue, say nothing. Let silence do the work for you. Most people expect retaliation, expect emotion, expect to see you flinch. But when you give them nothing, when you let their words hang in the air, unsupported, you force them to confront the weight of their own behavior. That is how you take control of a situation without ever needing to raise your voice. Marcus Aurelius once wrote in Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The true test in life is not what others say to you, but how you choose to respond. When you let insults roll off you, when you refuse to be rattled by those who seek to undermine you, you become unshakable. And when you are unshakable, people respect you, not because you demand it, but because they have no choice. So ask yourself, how do you typically react when someone tries to provoke you? Do you rush to defend yourself? Do you feel the need to prove something? Or do you command the room with nothing more than your presence, your silence, and your refusal to be shaken? The next time you find yourself in that moment, pause, hold your ground. Do not let them pull you into their game. Because the moment you realize that their words hold no weight, you win without even having to play. And if this resonates with you, stay focused, because in the next section, we'll explore how to establish the boundary between respect and disrespect. 5. Setting boundaries. There is a moment, a single defining moment, when respect is either solidified or lost. It's not always loud. It doesn't always come in the form of an outright insult or a public humiliation. More often, it's subtle. A dismissive glance when you speak. A request that takes your time for granted. A joke at your expense that lingers in the air just long enough to make you question whether it was meant to sting. These are the moments when a line is crossed, and the way you respond determines whether people continue to push that boundary or learn to respect it. Imagine this. You're in a meeting, offering insight that you've carefully considered. As you speak, a colleague leans back, glances at their phone, and sighs audibly, dismissing your words without even engaging. Or perhaps someone asks you for a favor, something they could easily handle themselves, but they assume you'll agree because you always do. Maybe it's the friend who constantly makes you the subject of their jokes, laughing it off when you show discomfort. Each of these scenarios has one thing in common: a quiet test of how much you will tolerate. And the mistake most people make is brushing it off, thinking, it's not that big of a deal, or maybe I'm overreacting. But every time you ignore disrespect, every time you let it slide, you send a message: I accept this. And when people see that you accept it, they will continue. Respect is not something you beg for. It is not something you can demand. It is something you enforce, and enforcement begins the moment you recognize when a line has been crossed and respond in a way that makes it clear, this will not happen again. One of the biggest misconceptions about earning respect is that it comes from proving yourself, from working harder, from being endlessly agreeable. But in reality, respect is most often gained in the moments when you refuse to accept less than you deserve. Think of someone you deeply respect. It is not just their achievements or intelligence that make them worthy of admiration. It is their presence, their ability to carry themselves in a way that makes it clear that disrespect is not an option. These people do not need to raise their voice, argue, or demand recognition. They command it by knowing exactly where their boundaries lie and enforcing them without hesitation. So how do you do the same? The first step is recognition. Pay attention to those small moments, the ones that make you feel slightly off balance, that leave you questioning whether you should have spoken up. That is your internal signal that a line has been crossed. If you ignore it, that discomfort will grow, and so will others' willingness to take advantage of it. The second step is response. The mistake people make is over-explaining, trying to soften their reaction, or waiting for multiple offenses before taking action. But a clear and immediate response is what prevents further violations. You do not need to be aggressive, but you do need to be firm. If someone asks for something unreasonable, rather than justifying why you can't do it, simply say, "That doesn't work for me." If they push back, do not engage, do not explain. Hold your position and let them feel the weight of your certainty. There is power in not negotiating your own boundaries. The moment you start justifying why you won't accept disrespect, you are allowing space for it to continue. But when you stand firm, without aggression, without apology, people sense that they are dealing with someone who cannot be tested. Epictetus once wrote in Discourses, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." In other words, do not fear others' reactions when you enforce your boundaries. Some may try to make you feel guilty. Some may act surprised that you are pushing back. Let them. Because the moment you allow yourself to be manipulated by their discomfort, you are choosing their approval over your own self-respect. Now, take a moment and reflect. Have you ever ignored a small moment of disrespect, only to regret it later? Have you ever felt resentment towards someone, not because of what they did, but because you allowed it? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if this resonates with you, stay focused, because in the next section, we'll uncover when to walk away, forcing the other person to lose their power. Here's how it works. The next time someone challenges your boundary, do not rush to fill the silence. Instead, simply look at them and say nothing. Let the discomfort sit. Most people will feel the weight of that silence and back off. You do not need to over-explain, defend yourself, or soften your position. The longer you hold that silence, the stronger your position becomes. Imagine someone asks you to do something unreasonable, and you firmly say, "I won't be able to do that." But instead of reacting when they push back, you simply hold eye contact, say nothing, and wait. That silence speaks louder than any justification ever could. It sends a clear message: I said what I said. I do not need to explain myself. Epictetus once said in Discourses, "First learn the meaning of what you say, and then speak." This applies perfectly to boundaries. Before you give an answer, ask yourself, do I actually want to do this? Does this align with my values? Will I regret this decision later? If the answer is no, then your response should be too. Here's something else to think about. Your boundaries don't just protect your time, they force others to respect your presence. The more selective you are with your commitments, the more valuable they become. If you are someone who agrees to everything, your time is taken for granted. But if you only commit when it truly matters, your word carries weight. So next time you feel pressured to accommodate someone when you really don't want to, take a breath. Pause, respond firmly, and then let the silence do the rest. The moment you stop over-explaining, over-apologizing, and over-justifying, you will feel an immediate shift. You will see how people begin to treat you differently. Now, take a moment and reflect. Have you ever agreed to something and later regretted it? Do you struggle with enforcing boundaries confidently? Have you ever noticed that the more you accommodate others, the less they appreciate it? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if this resonates with you, stay focused, because in the next section, we'll uncover when to walk away, forcing the other person to lose their power. 6. When to walk away. There comes a point in every confrontation, every toxic conversation, and every demeaning situation where the most powerful thing you can do is not argue, not explain, not fight for respect, but simply walk away. Many people make the mistake of thinking that standing their ground always means staying, debating, proving a point. But true power, true control over any situation lies in knowing when a battle is beneath you, when your presence is being wasted, and when the greatest display of self-respect is to leave. Think of the legendary Stoic emperor Marcus Aurelius. Despite being one of the most powerful men in history, he was constantly surrounded by scheming politicians, jealous rivals, and manipulative figures trying to sway him into unnecessary conflicts. But Marcus Aurelius understood something that many people fail to grasp. Not every battle is worth fighting. He did not engage in petty disputes. He did not seek validation from those who refused to see his worth. Instead, he led with action, wisdom, and restraint, choosing to focus his energy on what truly mattered. He knew that the greatest show of strength was not always in standing and arguing, but in knowing when to walk away. Now, imagine yourself in a modern situation where your value is being tested. Maybe you're in a high-level business meeting, presenting your carefully crafted ideas, and a colleague continuously dismisses you, not with logic, but with subtle condescension, undermining comments, and an unwillingness to engage in real discussion. You hold your ground, you respond with professionalism, yet nothing changes. You realize that this person is not here to contribute or collaborate. They are here to undermine you, to assert dominance over you. Or perhaps you're in a social setting among people you once called friends, and the jokes at your expense continue. You've already set boundaries. You've already made it clear that their words carry an edge, yet they persist. Not because they are oblivious, but because they see your discomfort as entertainment. In these moments, you have a choice. You can stay and fight for respect that will never come, trying to prove your worth to people who have already decided to disregard it. Or you can leave, making it clear that their validation is not something you seek or need. The second option is the real power move. Because when you walk away, when you remove yourself from a situation that does not serve you, you are sending a message louder than any words. I do not beg for respect. I command it. And if it is not given, I will not stay. The mistake people often make is thinking that leaving is a sign of weakness, of surrender. But in reality, it is one of the strongest things you can do. It shows that you value yourself more than you value someone else's opinion of you. That you do not need to plead, argue, or demand recognition from those who refuse to see it. Seneca, in On the Shortness of Life, wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. And what bigger waste of time is there than trying to gain respect from those who have no intention of giving it? Time spent arguing with fools is time stolen from your own purpose. Energy spent explaining yourself to someone who is committed to misunderstanding you is energy lost forever. Walking away is not about avoiding challenges. It is about choosing your battles wisely. There will always be situations that deserve your time, that require your engagement. But there will also be times when staying only diminishes you. You will know these moments when they come. The conversation that goes in circles, the person who refuses to listen, the environment that does nothing but drain you. In those moments, leaving is not an act of surrender. It is an act of power. And here is the most interesting part. When you walk away, you shift the dynamic entirely. The people who sought to undermine you are suddenly left with nothing to push against. They expected resistance. They expected engagement. They expected you to fight for their approval. Instead, you remove yourself, and in doing so, you leave them with only their own behavior to reflect on. Often, that silence speaks louder than any comeback ever could. Think of historical figures, leaders, and great minds who commanded respect. They did not waste their time arguing for their worth. They spoke, they acted, and when met with resistance from those who had no interest in genuine discourse, they moved on. This is the mindset of those who achieve great things. They do not dwell in spaces where they are not valued. They do not waste time proving themselves to those who will never listen. Now, reflect on your own life. Are there situations where you keep showing up, keep arguing, keep hoping for change, when deep down you know it will never come? Are there people you seek respect from who have already shown you that they do not give it freely? What would happen if, instead of fighting, you simply left? The next time you find yourself in a situation where your presence is being disrespected, ask yourself, is my energy best spent here, or is my power in walking away? Respect is not demanded. It is not begged for, it is commanded. And not through force, not through aggression, but through the way you carry yourself, the way you hold your ground, and the way you establish your boundaries. From the moment you enter a room, to the way you handle interruptions, challenges, and mockery, every action sends a message. People will treat you the way you allow them to. And today, you've learned the Stoic way to ensure that message is one of strength, self-respect, and quiet authority. The ancient Stoics understood this well. Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, none of them sought approval. They did not chase validation. They focused on controlling themselves, on acting with unwavering principle, and in doing so, they commanded the respect of history itself. Their power came not from demanding respect, but from being unshakable. And now it's your turn. Now, let's put this into action. Over the next 3 days, I challenge you to implement these strategies in real life. Day 1. When someone interrupts you, pause, maintain eye contact, and continue as if nothing happened. Day 2. If someone makes a joke at your expense, ask them to repeat it. Watch how the dynamic shifts. Day 3. When someone tries to provoke you, respond with a calm question instead of an emotional reaction. Then come back and comment, "What happened? Did people treat you differently? I want to hear your results." And remember, if someone is able to provoke you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. Epictetus. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next video will reveal the one mistake that ruins respect instantly. See you there.